For most of Earth's history, land did not matter. It was empty, unstable, and hostile to complex life. The ocean was where everything important happened. Long before dinosaurs walked the land, the seas were already ruled, not cautiously, not temporarily, but with power. In ancient waters, the first giants appeared, animals built for dominance, growing larger than modern sharks, wrapped in natural armor, thicker than bone, armed with jaws capable of crushing nearly anything alive at the time. The oceans they ruled were nothing like those we know today. Chemistry shifted, oxygen rose and fell, temperatures changed without warning. In this unstable world, evolution did not move gently, it moved decisively. Size became protection, armor became survival, power became the rule. The earliest complex ecosystems formed beneath the waves. This was where vision first mattered, where jaws first reshaped life, where predators rose, ruled, and disappeared. Again and again, the ocean created rulers, and just as quietly, erased them. So why did dominance emerge so early in the sea? How did entire dynasties of marine rulers vanish long before dinosaurs ever appeared? And what does their rise and fall reveal about a planet still learning how life survives? Tonight, we drift into those ancient waters, a place where Earth first learned how to build kings and how to forget them. Before we begin, let me know where you're listening from tonight and what time it is there. It's always comforting to see how far these sleepy stories travel. Now, take a slow breath, let your shoulders loosen, and together, let's sink into the ancient seas that ruled the earth long before dinosaurs ever walked the land. In the earliest chapters of Earth's long memory, water claimed nearly everything. The planet's surface lay wrapped in a restless skin of seas, shallow shelves spreading outward from scattered fragments of stone, deeper basins filling with darkness and pressure. Continents existed only as low silhouettes, their edges softened by waves, their interiors raw and exposed. Rain fell often, and without restraint. Rivers had not yet learned restraint either, and gravity pulled every loose mineral back toward the waiting ocean. From above, the world would have appeared simple, a sphere of moving water, broken only by hints of land that never fully held its shape. The oceans themselves were not calm places. They absorbed heat from a young sun, released it slowly, and redistributed energy around the globe. Tides swept across wide continental margins, stirring nutrients into the water and keeping life close to the surface. Volcanic activity along the seafloor fed the seas with dissolved metals and gases, creating chemistry that shifted gradually but rarely paused. In this environment, water offered both stability and motion, a place where temperature changed less violently than air, and where the weight of the world was gently shared by buoyancy. For emerging life, this softness mattered. Bodies could grow without bearing their full mass, structures could experiment with thickness and reach, and survival did not depend on standing upright against gravity. Land, by contrast, remained an inhospitable idea. Without soil, without protective plant cover, the surface baked and froze in rhythm with the sun. Ultraviolet radiation struck unfiltered, winds scoured exposed rock, and fresh water was fleeting, gathering briefly before draining away. There were no roots to bind the ground, no organic layers to trap moisture, no stable climate close to the surface. Any living thing that strayed too far from the water faced desiccation, damage, and isolation. The shore marked a boundary few could cross, not because the land was distant, but because it offered nothing back. Time passed slowly in this water-ruled world, measured not in generations, but in geological patience. The oceans kept their dominance, not through force, but through consistency. They recycled materials, buffered extremes, and connected distant places through currents that never truly stopped. Life learned to follow these pathways, drifting, swimming, and anchoring itself where conditions allowed complexity to take hold. Evolution favored forms that could persist in motion, tolerate chemical shifts, and feed within layered food webs that stacked from sunlight down into shadow. For hundreds of millions of years, this balance held. The planet breathed through its seas, and land remained a peripheral stage, waiting. Only later would the shoreline harden into something more inviting. For now, Earth belonged to water, and everything that lived understood this without words, without hesitation, moving within a world where the ocean came first and quietly shaped all that followed. Life did not hurry into complexity. It lingered, patient within the sea, repeating simple forms for immense spans of time before change arrived almost quietly. Single cells drifted and divided, filling the water with invisible industry, learning chemistry long before shape. They absorbed light, exchanged gases, and left subtle signatures in stone, building the groundwork for something slower and heavier. The ocean carried them gently, buffering extremes, allowing errors without immediate consequence. In water, time felt wider, and evolution could afford to experiment without urgency. Gradually, cells began to stay together, not out of intention, but convenience. Clusters moved more steadily through currents, shared resources, and endured conditions that solitary cells could not. These early unions were fragile, held together by simple bonds, yet they introduced a new possibility. Specialization emerged softly. Some cells focused on movement, others on digestion, others on sensation. Bodies were not yet animals in the familiar sense, but arrangements, living mosaics held together by cooperation rather than dominance. The ocean made this possible by offering constant contact. Nutrients flowed freely, oxygen dissolved gently through tissue, and waste drifted away without needing complex systems. Gravity loosened its grip, allowing larger forms to exist without rigid support. On land, such structures would have collapsed under their own weight or dried within moments. In the sea, they floated, folded, and endured. Water became both cradle and constraint, shaping life through steady pressure rather than sudden trials. Soft-bodied organisms spread across seafloors and shallow margins, their forms pressed lightly into sediment and preserved only rarely. They moved by rippling, by gliding, by slow contraction, leaving no shells, no bones, no defenses beyond obscurity. Some filtered particles from the water, others absorbed nutrients directly through their skin. Predation remained limited, yet the presence of bodies large enough to be eaten marked a turning point. Energy now flowed through layers of life, not just cycles of chemistry. As these organisms grew more numerous, interactions intensified, space became valuable, contact became unavoidable. Even without teeth or claws, competition reshaped behavior. Bodies flattened to cling to surfaces, elongated to reach flowing currents, or grew folds to increase contact with food. Sensory cells multiplied along edges and surfaces, forming the faint beginnings of awareness. Life was learning to respond, not just persist. These soft forms altered the environment around them. They stirred sediments, redirected nutrients, and created microhabitats where others could settle. The ocean floor grew textured, layered, and alive. Though delicate, these organisms prepared the stage for what would follow. By assembling bodies, dividing labor, and tolerating size, they opened pathways towards strength, speed, and defense. Nothing about this transition was dramatic. It unfolded beneath waves, unnoticed by any witness, written slowly into stone. Yet within these yielding bodies lay the foundations of every predator to come, shaped not by force, but by the quiet permission of water and time. Change did not arrive as a single moment, but the rocks remember it as a tightening of time. Layers that once held little variation began to fill with outlines, impressions, fragments of bodies shaped in ways not seen before. Within a relatively narrow stretch of geological history, the ocean grew crowded with form. Shapes diversified, edges sharpened, and movement became more purposeful. The water that had long allowed life to linger now carried an unusual density of living designs, each one testing a different solution to the same shared space. This transformation unfolded as conditions aligned. Oxygen levels in the ocean rose enough to support more active bodies, and mineral availability increased the strength of tissues. Genetic toolkits that had quietly accumulated found new expression, producing limbs, segments, mouths, and sensory clusters in rapid succession. Evolution did not invent from nothing here. It recombined, rearranged, and amplified what already existed, pushing variation outward rather than forward. Body plans emerged that would echo through hundreds of millions of years, recognizable even now in the anatomy of modern animals. As these forms multiplied, the seafloor changed character. Once dominated by gentle, low-energy organisms, it became layered with motion. Burrowing disturbed sediments, swimmers crossed above in overlapping paths, and anchored life filtered the water continuously. Food webs thickened, energy moved faster from producers to consumers, and waste cycled back into the system with increasing speed. The ocean felt full in a way it never had before, not just occupied, but actively contested. With density came interaction. Organisms encountered one another more often, and survival depended on response rather than chance. Some bodies favored protection, hardening their outer layers or growing rigid supports. Others favored efficiency, refining movement or feeding structures to exploit narrow niches. This was not yet an age of dominance, but of negotiation. Every adaptation altered the balance around it, creating pressure that shaped the next response. Diversity did not spread evenly, but clustered where conditions encouraged exchange and competition. This crowdedness transformed behavior. Passive drifting gave way to directed movement. Feeding became selective rather than incidental. Sensing grew more precise as organisms benefited from detecting light, shadow, and motion in an increasingly complex environment. The ocean became a place of signals, where presence mattered and absence carried consequence. Even without large predators, the foundations of pursuit and avoidance were already taking shape. Despite its apparent speed, this turning point remained fragile. Many forms appeared briefly in the record, then vanished, replaced by alternatives better suited to the shifting balance. The Cambrian seas were experimental, generous in possibilities but unforgiving in outcome. What endured were not specific species, but patterns of organization that proved resilient under pressure. When the pace of visible change eventually slowed, the ocean was no longer a sparse world of simple arrangements. It had become structured, interactive, and full of pathways for power to move. The stage was no longer empty, and life within it would never again evolve in isolation. Light had always been present in the ocean, filtering down through water in shifting bands, breaking into ripples and shimmer long before life learned to notice it. For a long time, illumination simply existed, warming surfaces and guiding chemistry without becoming information. That changed when certain bodies began to respond to brightness and shadow in more deliberate ways. Simple light-sensitive cells clustered along edges, across flattened skins, or near openings that faced the open water. These early structures did not yet form images, but they introduced direction, contrast, and awareness of movement. Once light could be detected, the ocean subtly transformed. Shapes moving overhead cast fleeting darkness. Reflections off scales, shells, or tissues became signals. Organisms that sensed these changes gained moments of advantage, adjusting position, altering rhythm, or withdrawing into shelter before contact occurred. Survival shifted from chance encounters to informed reactions. The water remained the same, yet life within it grew newly alert, responding not just to touch or chemistry, but to distance. As visual sensitivity improved, bodies followed. Forward orientation became useful, encouraging clearer front and back distinctions. Symmetry sharpened, allowing paired sensors to compare light from different directions. Some organisms developed recessed structures that limited stray light, refining perception into rough form. Vision did not emerge as a single innovation, but as many variations on the same theme, each tuned to a specific depth, clarity, or lifestyle. In sunlit shallows, sight favored color and motion. In dimmer waters, it favored contrast and silhouette. With this new sense came consequence. Movement could be tracked, approach anticipated, and escape timed more precisely. Predators no longer relied solely on contact or random proximity. They could follow outlines, judge speed, and choose targets that moved differently from the background. At the same time, prey species adapted by blending into surroundings, remaining still, or altering patterns and textures. Bodies grew spines, ridges, or disruptive shapes not only for defense, but to confuse the eye. What had once been passive existence became visual dialogue, a constant exchange of signals and countersignals. This quiet competition unfolded everywhere light reached. Eyes sharpened, then demanded responses from others. As predators refined detection, prey refined concealment. As prey improved deception, predators improved focus. Each adjustment reshaped the environment slightly, increasing pressure on all participants. The ocean grew layered with attention, a place where being seen carried meaning and consequence. Even organisms that never developed true eyes felt the impact. Their behaviors shifted as visual hunters altered movement patterns across the seafloor and through open water. Safe spaces changed shape. Timing became critical. The pace of interaction quickened, and the cost of exposure increased. Vision accelerated evolution without noise or spectacle, simply by adding information. In learning to see, life crossed a quiet threshold. The ocean did not grow more violent, but more aware. Every flicker of motion mattered, and from that point onward, survival would depend not only on endurance, but on perception shaped by light. Before jaws appeared, feeding remained a quiet, patient act. Bodies drifted or anchored themselves, where currents delivered nourishment, filtering particles from the water or grazing gently across microbial films. Energy entered slowly, measured by availability rather than pursuit. Movement served positioning more than capture, and encounters between animals rarely ended in sudden loss. Survival favored endurance, timing, and proximity to steady resources rather than speed or force. This balance shifted when certain bodies developed a new kind of opening, framed by hardened supports and powered by muscle. These early jaws did not arrive fully formed or specialized. They emerged as modified structures, simple hinges that could close with purpose. At first, they offered modest advantages, the ability to grasp, scrape, or hold rather than simply absorb. Yet even in their earliest forms, they introduced intent. Feeding no longer depended entirely on what the water provided. It could now involve choice. With jaws, animals began to interact with their environment more directly. Mobile prey could be targeted rather than avoided. larger food sources could be broken apart instead of bypassed. This change encouraged bodies to move with greater direction, to orient toward opportunity rather than remain passive within it. Muscles strengthened, skeletons reinforced, and nervous systems adjusted to coordinate timing and force. The ocean responded by becoming more dynamic, its inhabitants no longer content to wait. As jaws became more effective, roles within ecosystems shifted. Filtering and grazing did not disappear, but they were joined by active hunting. Energy moved more quickly through food webs as predators concentrated nutrients from multiple prey into single bodies. Size became more flexible as an advantage. Some animals grew larger to overpower, others remained small but precise, relying on speed or surprise. Diversity increased not only in shape, but in behavior, as different strategies proved successful in different settings. The presence of jaws reshaped more than feeding. Prey species adapted by altering form and habit. Armor thickened, spines lengthened, and shells closed more tightly. Some bodies flattened to hug surfaces, others retreated into crevices or soft sediments. Movement patterns changed as stillness and sudden bursts replaced constant drifting. Even those never directly consumed felt the influence, as hunting altered traffic through the water and across the seafloor. This adaptation spread steadily, refined by repetition rather than sudden dominance. Jaws diversified into crushing plates, slicing edges, and gripping hooks, each suited to particular diets and depths. The ocean began to favor precision alongside strength. Encounters grew shorter, outcomes more decisive. Life became increasingly shaped by interaction rather than background conditions alone. What made Jaws transformative was not aggression, but efficiency. They allowed animals to access energy locked within other bodies, accelerating growth, reproduction, and evolutionary feedback. The ocean did not become chaotic, but it became layered with intent. Feeding turned directional. Movement gained purpose. From this point forward, survival often depended on the ability to take, not just receive. In learning to bite, life altered the rhythm of the sea, setting patterns that would echo long after the first jaws closed and opened again. As bodies grew more active and encounters more frequent, survival in the ancient seas began to depend on resistance as much as motion. Soft tissue alone no longer offered enough separation between life and loss. Pressure accumulated quietly, favoring forms that could endure contact, deflect force, or survive a single mistake. Protection did not arrive as an answer to violence, but as a response to proximity. In crowded waters, bodies brushed, collided, and pressed against one another, and those that carried some barrier endured longer within that closeness. Early armor took many forms, each shaped by chemistry and environment. Some organisms absorbed minerals from seawater, stiffening their outer layers with calcium compounds that hardened slowly over generations. Others developed articulated coverings, segmenting their bodies into plates that bent without breaking. Shells enclosed soft interiors, sealing them from sudden contact, while spikes extended outward, increasing apparent size and discouraging approach. None of these features emerged in isolation. They followed pathways already prepared by genetic and environmental possibility, refined through repetition rather than intention. The sea itself supported this experimentation. Dissolved minerals circulated continuously, and water buffered weight, allowing heavier coverings to exist without collapsing the body beneath. On land, such mass would have been costly. Underwater, it became viable. Armor did not need to be light, only functional. This allowed organisms to grow protective layers gradually thicker, testing how much could be carried without losing essential movement or feeding ability. As these coverings became more common, their influence spread beyond defense. The presence of hard surfaces reshaped interactions across the seafloor. Predators adjusted techniques, learning to probe gaps, exploit joints, or abandon targets that required too much effort. Prey species altered behavior, relying on stillness, clustering, or positioning against substrates to reduce exposed edges. The environment filled with textured shapes, ridges, and layered forms, changing how water flowed and how nutrients settled. Yet protection came with cost. Armor reduced speed, increased energy demands, and limited flexibility. Heavily plated bodies moved more deliberately, trading quick escape for endurance. Some species accepted this exchange, anchoring themselves in safe zones or advancing slowly across stable terrain. Others balanced protection with mobility, evolving thinner plates or retractable spines that allowed brief bursts of motion. The ocean encouraged many solutions, not a single ideal. This balance shaped evolutionary pathways. Species that overcommitted to defense risked stagnation, unable to adjust when conditions shifted. Those that remained too exposed faced constant attrition. Survival favored forms that matched protection to lifestyle and environment, tuning armor to depth, current strength, and ecological role. The result was diversity, not uniformity, a mosaic of shells, scales, and spines moving at different rhythms through shared waters. Armor did not end predation or competition. It slowed them, redirected them, and added texture to survival. By placing distance between bodies and consequence, it altered the tempo of life in the sea. Movement became more considered. Contact carried less finality. In this measured exchange between defense and motion, the ocean continued its long shaping, allowing life to grow heavier, more complex, and more resilient without breaking the quiet continuity of its depths. As ecosystems thickened and roles sharpened, certain bodies moved into positions of quiet authority. Fossils preserve their presence not through abundance, but through absence. These animals show little evidence of predation upon themselves. Their remains are rarely marked by attack, their structures built for control rather than avoidance. They occupied the highest tier of their environments, not because they were everywhere, but because nothing else consistently challenged them. These early apex predators did not rely on a single trait. Dominance emerged from a balance of size, motion, and mechanical strength. Larger bodies carried momentum, allowing them to displace water with force and stability. Speed added reach, turning distance into advantage rather than safety. Bite structures grew capable of crushing, slicing, or gripping with efficiency that left little opportunity for escape. Together, these qualities narrowed the field of competition until only a few bodies could operate freely without constant defense. The ocean favored this outcome sooner than land ever could. Water supported mass without demanding heavy skeletal investment, allowing animals to grow large before gravity imposed strict limits. Dense food webs provided sustained energy, concentrating nutrition upward through layers of consumption. Movement occurred in 3 dimensions, offering predators multiple angles of approach and making vigilance more costly for prey. In this environment, power scaled quickly. Once a body crossed a certain threshold of effectiveness, it entered a space few others could reach. Fossil layers show this pattern repeating across time and place. Different lineages rose, each shaped by local conditions, yet the same general form appears again and again. Large, mobile hunters with reinforced heads and efficient feeding tools established long reigns. Their presence altered behavior throughout the ecosystem. Smaller predators shifted niches or focused on softer prey. Prey species adapted to avoid detection or minimized movement altogether. The shape of life around them bent gently but persistently. What is striking is not their ferocity, but their early arrival. Apex predators emerged long before ecosystems reached modern complexity. They did not wait for elaborate food chains or advanced intelligence. The basic mechanics of energy transfer and movement were enough. Once jaws, armor, and vision aligned within a dense environment, dominance became an available role. Evolution did not hesitate to fill it. These predators were not wasteful. Their efficiency limited their numbers, preventing them from overwhelming the systems that sustained them. They moved deliberately, conserving energy, selecting targets carefully. This restraint was not conscious, but structural. Bodies built for power require balance, and the ocean rewarded stability over excess. Their reigns were long by human measure, yet temporary in geological time. Still, their appearance marked a shift. From this point onward, every ecosystem would include hierarchies shaped by the possibility of unstoppable force. The sea had learned how to build rulers, and it did so early, quietly, guided by physics and abundance rather than intent. In these first apex predators, the ocean revealed its capacity to produce dominance, not as spectacle, but as a natural outcome of life growing dense enough to press against itself. The Ordovician seas carried a new sense of scale. Bodies that once remained close to the seafloor or drifted carefully through short distances began to move with broader intention, cutting through open water rather than skirting its edges. Swimming became sustained rather than occasional, and with it came length, mass, and presence that could not be ignored. The ocean opened into corridors of movement where larger forms could travel efficiently, turning space itself into an advantage. This rise in size was not sudden, nor was it reckless. Ocean chemistry during this time supported it quietly. Increased oxygen dissolved into the water, not evenly, but enough to support more active metabolisms in shallow and mid-depth environments. Nutrients circulated reliably along continental shelves, feeding dense communities that transferred energy upward with little loss. Calcium and other minerals remained abundant, reinforcing structural tissue and allowing bodies to grow without sacrificing integrity. The sea provided the raw materials needed for bulk, and gravity offered little resistance beneath the surface. Large swimming predators emerged within this setting not as anomalies, but as extensions of existing pathways. Elongated forms streamlined themselves for steady propulsion, using powerful tails or coordinated body undulations to maintain speed over distance. Internal support strengthened, jaws adapted to secure moving prey, and sensory systems aligned toward motion detection in open water. These animals were not simply bigger versions of earlier hunters. They occupied a new role, linking distant parts of the environment through movement alone. Size reshaped interaction at every level. Larger bodies required more energy, but they also gained access to a wider range of prey. They could overwhelm defenses that once proved effective, absorb minor injury without immediate consequence, and travel between feeding zones without exhaustion. Smaller predators found themselves displaced, forced into specialized niches or sheltered habitats where scale mattered less than precision. Prey species responded by clustering, dispersing, or shifting vertically through the water column to avoid predictable routes. The presence of giants altered the physical character of the sea. Their movement stirred water layers, disrupted schools, and cast long shadows that signaled approach well before contact. Even organisms never directly pursued adjusted behavior in response, settling lower, rising briefly, or adopting patterns that minimized visibility. The ocean became stratified, not just by depth and chemistry, but by risk shaped through size and motion. What made size advantageous was not intimidation, but efficiency. Larger swimming predators conserved energy through momentum, maintaining speed with fewer corrections than smaller bodies. They endured fluctuations in food availability better, storing reserves and traveling farther to locate resources. In a world defined by movement and density, size reduced vulnerability to sudden change. These Ordovician giants did not rule uncontested, nor did they end ecological balance. Their numbers remained limited by the same systems that sustained them. Yet their presence marked a turning point. The sea had learned how to build bodies that dominated space itself, and once that threshold was crossed, size became a lasting currency of survival. The water carried them smoothly, as it always had, allowing mass and motion to merge into a quiet authority that reshaped the living ocean around them. Shallow seas gathered life the way wide bowls gather rain. Sunlight reached the bottom easily, warming water and feeding the slow work of photosynthesis. Along coastlines and continental shelves, energy entered the system in steady abundance, passing from microscopic producers into drifting grazers, then upward through layers of moving bodies. These regions did not feel crowded at first, but they were rich, and richness draws attention. Predators followed food, and food followed light, concentrating activity close to the edges of land that still offered little life of their own. In these sunlit waters, visibility remained high, and cycles ran fast. Daylight powered growth, growth supported grazing, and grazing sustained hunters that could move between patches of productivity. Unlike the deeper ocean, where energy arrived sparsely and unpredictably, shallow seas renewed themselves daily. Tides stirred nutrients, currents refreshed oxygen, and seasonal changes carried pulses of abundance across broad, accessible terrain. For predators seeking reliability rather than chance, these margins offered opportunity that the open depths could not yet match. This concentration shaped behavior. Predators learned the geography of light, tracking not only prey but patterns of productivity. Movement followed coastlines, reefs in their early forms, and submerged shelves where sunlight lingered longest. Speed mattered here, as prey had fewer places to vanish. Vision played a stronger role, and pursuit unfolded across short distances rather than open expanses. Bodies tuned themselves to bursts of motion, sudden turns, and precise timing, well suited for hunting in places where energy stayed close to the surface. Yet abundance carried risk. Where food accumulated, competition followed. Multiple predators overlapped territories, crossing paths repeatedly. Encounters became frequent, and mistakes costly. Shallow waters offered fewer routes of escape, bounded above by air and below by solid ground. Prey species faced constant exposure, adapting through schooling, camouflage, or rapid growth to minimize vulnerable stages. Even predators navigated tension, balancing access to food against increased interference from rivals. The environment itself amplified these pressures. Storms churned shallow seas more violently than deeper waters, scattering organisms and reshaping habitats within short spans of time. Temperature fluctuated more sharply near the surface, demanding flexibility from bodies tuned to narrow ranges. Freshwater input altered salinity near coastlines, creating gradients that some species exploited and others avoided. Survival favored those that could endure variation without losing efficiency. Despite these challenges, shallow seas remained central to early marine dominance. They acted as engines of innovation, where high energy supported experimentation in form and behavior. Predators refined strategies quickly, prey responded in kind, and ecosystems adjusted through constant interaction. The same forces that made these regions dangerous also made them productive, sustaining complex life long before stability spread elsewhere. Life in these sunlit waters moved at a quicker pace, shaped by light and constrained by proximity. The ocean did not offer safety or peace, but it offered opportunity in abundance. Along these margins, the foundations of marine power continued to form, carried forward by sunlight, movement, and the quiet arithmetic of energy flowing through crowded, living space. The Silurian seas settled into a different rhythm. Environmental conditions that once fluctuated sharply began to stabilize in subtle ways, allowing marine life to refine rather than merely persist. Water chemistry shifted gradually, oxygen spread more evenly through productive layers, and coastlines reorganized as sea levels rose and fell with calmer regularity. These changes did not erase pressure, but they reshaped it, favoring endurance and precision over constant improvisation. With greater stability came opportunity for refinement. Predators adjusted their approach, no longer relying solely on size or speed, but on timing and method. Some adopted ambush strategies, blending into structured seafloor habitats and waiting for movement to pass within reach. Others became cruisers, patrolling defined paths where prey predictably gathered. Hunting grew less generalized and more deliberate, shaped by the contours of reefs, shelves, and submerged ridges that now supported dense communities. These physical environments offered structure that earlier seas lacked. Hard surfaces became common, providing anchor points and shelter that reorganized how animals moved and fed. This complexity allowed predators to specialize, tuning their bodies to particular depths or prey types. Jaws adapted further, not simply growing stronger, but becoming more efficient at specific tasks. Crushing, slicing, and gripping diversified as distinct approaches rather than variations of the same motion. Energy flowed through narrower channels, concentrating advantage in those best suited to exploit it. Prey species followed a similar path. Rather than relying on broad defenses, they refined protection and behavior to match specific threats. Armor segmented for flexibility, spines positioned strategically, and shells shaped to deflect rather than merely resist. Movement patterns changed as well. Some animals remained still for long periods, relying on concealment, while others developed rapid escape responses triggered by precise sensory cues. Defense became active rather than passive, woven into daily behavior. This specialization increased interdependence within ecosystems. As roles narrowed, species relied more heavily on particular resources and conditions. Stability supported this arrangement, but it also created vulnerability. A shift in temperature, chemistry, or habitat could disrupt tightly tuned relationships, favoring adaptability alongside expertise. The Silurian Ocean balanced these forces, encouraging refinement without fully eliminating risk. Predators and prey alike became more selective. Encounters were fewer, but more decisive. The sea no longer functioned as a uniform arena, but as a patchwork of niches, each governed by its own rules of engagement. Movement followed familiar routes, and behavior aligned with predictable cycles of light, tide, and seasonal change. Life began to feel settled, even as it continued to evolve. Through this period, marine ecosystems gained a quieter sophistication. Power did not always belong to the largest body, nor safety to the hardest shell. Success depended on fit, on how well form matched environment and strategy matched circumstance. The Silurian shift did not introduce chaos or calm in isolation. It blended both, shaping oceans where life grew more precise, more interconnected, and more finely balanced within a world that continued its slow, patient turning beneath the waves. The Devonian oceans deepened in complexity, carrying a momentum built from earlier refinements and releasing it into form. Life here did not pause to consolidate. It expanded outward, experimenting with strength, structure, and scale in ways that reshaped the balance beneath the surface. Water remained familiar, yet the bodies moving through it felt different, heavier, more defined, as if the sea itself had begun to favor solidity over subtlety. This period earned its quiet reputation through abundance rather than dominance. Fishes diversified across nearly every available niche, their forms ranging from flexible swimmers to compact, heavily reinforced shapes. Internal skeletons strengthened, fins gained control, and musculature thickened, allowing movement to become both powerful and precise. Speed increased, but so did stability. Bodies learned to accelerate, turn, and brake with intent, responding to increasingly complex surroundings without losing efficiency. Strength expressed itself not only through motion, but through construction. Armor returned in new arrangements, layered rather than external alone. Thickened plates protected vital regions, especially around the head and core, where damage carried the highest cost. These coverings did not simply repeat earlier shells. They integrated with internal frameworks, distributing force rather than resisting it outright. The result was resilience that allowed animals to survive collisions, attacks, and environmental stress with greater consistency. Such protection encouraged bolder behavior. Predators pressed into contested spaces, confident that brief contact would not always prove fatal. Prey species responded in kind, growing larger or harder to reduce vulnerability during encounters. Size once again became advantageous, not just for dominance, but for endurance. Larger bodies buffered internal systems against fluctuations in oxygen, temperature, and salinity, allowing survival across broader ranges. The ocean rewarded this versatility. Ecosystems adjusted around these changes. Food webs grew more layered as heavily built animals fed on one another, transferring energy through fewer, larger steps. The pace of life slowed slightly at the top, even as activity intensified below. Younger, smaller organisms passed quickly through vulnerable stages, while adults persisted longer, shaping environments through repeated presence. Sediments shifted under their weight. Currents altered as schools moved together through narrow channels. The Devonian Sea did not abandon delicacy. Alongside armored giants swam slender forms that relied on speed, timing, or flexibility. Innovation favored contrast rather than uniformity. Strength coexisted with lightness, and protection balanced against maneuverability. These opposing strategies shared the same waters, each thriving where conditions matched form. Through this period, marine life demonstrated how far structure could be pushed without losing adaptability. Bodies grew thicker, systems more integrated, and interactions more deliberate. The ocean absorbed this density without fracture, carrying weight and motion in equal measure. Beneath the surface, the Devonian felt assured, not static, but confident in its complexity. Life had learned to build itself strongly and move without hesitation, shaping seas that felt full, active, and quietly enduring. Power in the ancient ocean did not announce itself through speed alone. It took shape through mass, density, and the quiet confidence of bodies built to withstand pressure from all directions. Bones thickened gradually, not as decoration, but as structure capable of absorbing force without splintering. Skulls became reinforced chambers, protecting sensory centers while providing broad anchor points for muscles. Jaws followed this architecture, shortening, widening, and strengthening until they could close with decisive weight rather than delicate precision. Underwater, brute force found room to function. Water softened the burden of gravity, allowing bodies to grow heavier without collapsing under their own mass. A form that would fail on land could thrive beneath the surface, suspended and supported by buoyancy. This allowed animals to invest in thickness rather than lightness, trading rapid maneuverability for stability and power. Motion slowed slightly, but each movement carried consequence. Crushing jaws transformed interaction in these environments. Instead of chasing relentlessly, predators could rely on decisive encounters. A single successful bite could end resistance, breaking through armor or disabling movement instantly. Teeth became less about slicing and more about pressure, arranged to distribute force evenly across prey. Musculature expanded around the skull and neck, anchoring jaws capable of sustained clamping rather than quick snapping. This method favored patience and positioning, aligning with environments where encounters were frequent and escape routes limited. Water enhanced these strategies by reducing recoil and dispersing impact. When force was applied, it traveled through fluid rather than empty space, cushioning sudden stress while allowing pressure to spread efficiently. Bodies could push against prey or terrain without losing balance, making grappling and holding viable tactics. The ocean rewarded animals that could apply force steadily rather than explosively, reinforcing designs built for endurance. As these powerful forms became more common, ecosystems adjusted. Prey species evolved thicker coverings, deeper bodies, or behaviors that minimized exposure to frontal attacks. Some retreated into narrow spaces where large skulls could not follow, while others relied on speed to avoid initial contact. Yet even avoidance carried cost, as energy spent fleeing reduced growth and reproduction. The presence of brute force reshaped not only anatomy, but daily movement patterns across the sea. These developments marked a shift in how dominance was expressed. Strength no longer depended solely on reaching prey, but on what happened after contact. Heavy bodies could afford brief mistakes, absorbing blows that would cripple lighter forms. They persisted through turbulence, collisions, and shifting conditions that favored resilience over finesse. The ocean became a place where being solid mattered. Such power did not erase variation. Alongside thick bone and reinforced skulls lived creatures built for speed or subtlety. Yet the success of mass demonstrated a fundamental truth of water-bound worlds. When gravity loosens its grip, strength can accumulate without collapse. The sea allowed bodies to become engines of pressure and force, turning weight into advantage and shaping a lineage of animals for whom power itself became a reliable path to survival. Movement in the ocean gradually learned to narrow itself. As bodies grew heavier and environments more crowded, shapes that once tolerated resistance began to slip past it. Rounded forms stretched into tapered lines, surfaces smoothed, and protrusions diminished. Water flowed more cleanly around these bodies, reducing drag and conserving energy. Speed did not arrive suddenly, but accumulated through small refinements that favored efficiency over effort. Streamlining altered how animals occupied space. Rather than pushing against water, fast swimmers learned to part it, leaving little disturbance behind. Muscles arranged themselves along elongated frames, translating contraction into forward motion with minimal loss. Fins narrowed and aligned, contributing to control without unnecessary resistance. These forms did not rely on constant acceleration. They sustained motion, covering distance smoothly, allowing pursuit to unfold over time rather than in frantic bursts. As predators grew capable of speed, size alone lost its certainty. Larger bodies still carried authority, but swift forms could exploit openings that mass could not reach. Speed allowed predators to choose engagements, closing gaps quickly or abandoning pursuit when conditions shifted. This flexibility became valuable in dynamic environments where prey learned to scatter, dive, or change direction abruptly. A fast body could adapt mid-chase, adjusting path and timing with subtle movements rather than brute force. Prey species responded by refining their own movement. Some developed sudden bursts of speed, timed precisely to break line of sight. Others relied on erratic motion, changing direction sharply to disrupt pursuit. Schools moved as coordinated units, creating confusion through synchronized shifts. Even small improvements in acceleration or turning radius could mean survival when encounters unfolded at speed. The ocean grew filled with motion patterns layered atop one another, each shaped by observation and response. Two approaches emerged alongside this evolution. Chasing favored sustained speed and endurance. Predators that followed prey over distance benefited from streamlined forms and efficient energy use. They patrolled open water and predictable routes, wearing down targets through persistence rather than immediate capture. Ambush favored stillness and timing. Bodies adapted to remain unnoticed, aligning color and shape with surroundings before releasing stored energy in a single explosive movement. Speed mattered here, not over distance, but over moments. Both strategies relied on precision. Muscles coordinated with sensory input to align movement with opportunity. Errors carried cost, as speed reduced reaction time and increased the consequences of collision or miscalculation. The environment itself shaped outcomes, with currents, obstacles, and light influencing when and how motion succeeded. Successful forms integrated speed with awareness, balancing momentum against control. The presence of fast predators altered ecosystems quietly. Prey shifted daily routines, avoiding open water during peak activity or moving vertically to reduce exposure. Smaller predators adopted stealth or timing over pursuit, fitting between dominant strategies rather than competing directly. Energy flowed along faster pathways, moving through fewer interactions but with greater intensity. Speed did not replace strength, it complemented it. In the ancient sea, dominance belonged to those that combine motion with form suited to their world. By learning to move with water rather than against it, life transformed speed into a reliable tool, shaping interactions where timing mattered as much as mass, and movement itself became a decisive force. Safety in the ancient ocean did not exist as a place, only as timing. Shallow seas once appeared inviting, filled with light and energy, but as predators diversified, these regions lost their sheltering quality. Near the surface, visibility favored hunters that relied on speed and sight. Along the seafloor, armored bodies and ambush specialists waited among ridges and sediments. Between them, open water belonged to cruisers that patrolled continuously. No depth remained untouched for long. Movement itself became exposure. This occupation of the water column reshaped how danger moved. Predators did not confine themselves to a single layer. Some rose from below, others descended from above, and still others crossed laterally with steady intent. The ocean became three-dimensional in its risks, with threats arriving from directions that could not be watched simultaneously. Shallow zones, once valuable for food and warmth, turned into intersections where multiple strategies overlapped. The lack of refuge forced prey species into adjustment rather than resistance. Strength alone offered limited protection when pressure came from all sides. Instead, behavior carried survival forward. Timing became essential. Many animals restricted movement to brief windows when predators were less active, rising or feeding only when conditions aligned. Others changed depth frequently, avoiding predictability even at the cost of energy. Grouping emerged as a common response. Schools formed not for defense through force, but through confusion and awareness. Coordinated movement blurred individual outlines, making targeting more difficult. Sudden synchronized shifts disrupted pursuit, buying moments of escape rather than decisive advantage. These behaviors required communication and responsiveness rather than physical reinforcement, favoring nervous systems capable of rapid coordination. Some species relied on stillness. Remaining motionless against textured environments reduced detection, especially in crowded visual fields. Coloration and pattern adjusted subtly, breaking outlines without eliminating form. This strategy demanded patience and precision, as movement at the wrong moment erased concealment. Others embraced unpredictability, darting erratically to overwhelm the tracking abilities of faster hunters. Survival depended on remaining difficult to follow rather than impossible to catch. Vertical movement became another tool. Prey traveled up and down through the water column, exploiting changes in light, temperature, and predator presence. Descending briefly into darker layers reduced visibility, while rising into brighter zones confused silhouettes. These migrations were small in scale but frequent, allowing animals to slip between threats without leaving productive regions entirely. Even reproduction adapted. Some species synchronized spawning events to overwhelm predators with abundance, ensuring that at least some offspring survived through sheer number rather than protection. Others reduced exposure by producing fewer young with behaviors already tuned to avoidance. The ocean rewarded strategies that minimized time spent vulnerable. In this world, safety was never guaranteed. It was negotiated continuously through movement, timing, and awareness. Prey species did not become weaker under this pressure. They became attentive. Strength mattered less than responsiveness, and armor less than choice. The ancient sea offered no quiet corners, only shifting margins where life learned to persist, not by resisting danger, but by moving within it carefully, moment by moment. The ocean's long continuity carried moments of sudden silence. Layers of stone record these interruptions not as gradual fades, but as sharp boundaries where abundance thins abruptly. Complex communities disappear, replaced by simplified assemblages that feel quiet by comparison. These shifts were not confined to shorelines or surface waters. They reached down through the entire marine world, collapsing systems that had taken millions of years to assemble. Such events unfolded through changes that moved faster than adaptation could follow. Chemistry altered, oxygen fell unevenly, and temperatures drifted beyond familiar ranges. Circulation patterns shifted, breaking the steady delivery of nutrients that supported dense food webs. When energy flow faltered, the effects spread upward quickly. Species at the base struggled first, and the consequences climbed with little delay. What had once been stable became fragile in a matter of generations. Marine life felt these resets more intensely than land ever could at that time. The ocean connected distant regions through currents, allowing disruption to propagate widely. Unlike isolated terrestrial environments, collapse in one place echoed elsewhere, thinning ecosystems across entire basins. Recovery required time, not only for species to return, but for chemical balance to reestablish itself. During these intervals, the sea carried fewer bodies, less motion, and longer stretches of emptiness. Dominant predators vanished with particular speed. Their disappearance stands out clearly in the fossil record. Large bodies depended on abundant prey and stable conditions. When those supports weakened, Mass became a liability rather than strength. Specialized hunters lacked flexibility, unable to switch quickly to altered food sources or lower energy demands. Their absence left gaps at the top of food webs, removing pressure that had shaped behavior across ecosystems. These losses were not gradual declines. In some layers, apex forms appear fully present, then gone. Their tools for dominance offered little protection against systemic failure. Armor, speed, and power mattered only when environments remained predictable. When oxygen fell or temperatures shifted sharply, physiology itself became the constraint. The ocean did not target giants deliberately. It simply withdrew the conditions that allowed them to exist. What followed was not immediate renewal, but simplification. Smaller, more adaptable organisms expanded into emptied spaces, tolerant of fluctuation and scarcity. They moved cautiously through recovering systems, reshaping interactions from the bottom upward. Over time, complexity returned, but it took new forms. Old rulers did not reappear. New ones emerged from lineages shaped by survival under stress rather than dominance under stability. These repeated resets imparted a rhythm to marine history. Growth led to structure, structure invited vulnerability, and collapse cleared space for renewal. The sea did not remember its former arrangements. It moved forward without preference, guided by physics and chemistry rather than legacy. Each extinction rewrote relationships, altering which strategies thrived and which ended abruptly. Beneath the waves, silence was never permanent, but it was profound. In the aftermath of collapse, the ocean learned again how to build abundance. Yet every reset carried the memory of loss within stone, quiet evidence that dominance in the sea was always conditional, lasting only as long as the world beneath the surface allowed it to be. Success in the ocean often carried a hidden weight. Predators that rose to the top of their ecosystems did so by refining particular strengths, narrowing their needs until hunting became efficient and reliable. Over time, these advantages shaped bodies and behaviors into precise tools. Yet precision reduced flexibility. When conditions shifted, what once ensured dominance could suddenly limit survival. Top predators depended on abundance. Their large bodies, powerful systems, and sustained activity required consistent energy flow. When prey populations thinned or migrated, these hunters could not easily adjust. Smaller animals changed diet, depth, or behavior, but highly specialized predators faced constraints built into their form. Their jaws, speed, or armor had been tuned for specific targets, leaving few alternatives when those targets disappeared. This vulnerability appears repeatedly in stone. Fossil layers show dominant hunters flourishing across long stretches, then ending abruptly as environments changed. Their disappearance does not signal weakness in life, but rigidity in design. Specialization allowed extraordinary efficiency within stable conditions, but stability in the ocean was never permanent. Shifts in chemistry, temperature, or circulation reshaped food webs faster than large bodies could respond. Specialization extended beyond anatomy into behavior. Some predators relied on particular hunting grounds, depth ranges, or movement patterns. Others depended on specific prey sizes or structures. When ecosystems reorganized, these patterns broke apart. Familiar routes emptied. Timing fell out of sync. The skills that once ensured success now placed animals out of alignment with their surroundings. In contrast, generalists endured quietly. Smaller predators with broader diets survived collapses by shifting roles. Prey species with simple needs adapted through movement and timing rather than form. Even within predatory lineages, Less dominant relatives often persisted while apex forms vanished. The fossil record records this imbalance again and again, showing survival favoring adaptability over refinement. This pattern shaped the rhythm of marine history. Dominance emerged, flourished, and faded, leaving space for new strategies to rise. Each cycle reinforced the same lesson without intention. The ocean rewarded success, but never guaranteed permanence. Power carried responsibility to conditions beyond control, and when those conditions withdrew, success accelerated collapse rather than preventing it. These losses did not represent failure in evolution. They were outcomes of alignment between form and environment. When that alignment broke, extinction followed without drama. The ocean did not resist change or preserve champions. It moved on, redistributing opportunity among those able to persist under new rules. Through repeated cycles, life learned balance through repetition rather than memory. Dominance remained temporary, specialization precise but fragile. The sea favored those who could yield, adjust, and endure uncertainty. In this long narrative written in layers of stone, the cost of being too successful was not punishment, but inevitability. The ocean accepted every advantage, then tested it again and again against a world that never stayed the same. After collapse, the ocean did not rush to restore what was lost. It moved forward quietly, rebuilding from the simplest foundations upward. In the wake of extinction, familiar shapes were absent, leaving space rather than chaos. Nutrients still flowed, light still reached the surface layers, and water continued to buffer extremes. These constants allowed recovery to begin not through resurrection, but through reassembly. New predators emerged from survivors that had endured scarcity rather than dominance. Smaller bodies expanded first, filling roles left vacant by vanished giants. Their designs favored flexibility over refinement. They fed broadly, moved cautiously, and reproduced efficiently. As food webs thickened again, these adaptable hunters diversified, some growing larger, others specializing slowly as conditions stabilized. Power returned step by step, shaped by caution learned through survival. The ocean recovered faster than land because it never lost its connective tissue. Currents continued to distribute nutrients and oxygen across vast distances, linking distant regions into a shared system. When productivity returned in one area, it could seed others through drifting larvae and migrating forms. On land, isolated environments recovered independently, constrained by barriers and harsher exposure. Water softened the shock of collapse and carried opportunity smoothly across basins. Chemical balance also returned more readily at sea. While land surfaces baked and froze, the ocean moderated temperature and absorbed change gradually. This stability allowed life to reestablish complex interactions sooner. Producers multiplied, grazers followed, and predators emerged only once energy pathways proved reliable. Recovery unfolded as a layered process rather than a sudden replacement. Over time, familiar patterns reappeared. Predators grew more efficient as prey populations stabilized. Specialized forms arose again, drawn by abundant resources and predictable environments. Size returned, then armor, then speed. Each wave echoed earlier histories without copying them exactly. The ocean rebuilt ecosystems that functioned similarly, even as the species themselves differed. What mattered was structure, not identity. These cycles repeated across eras. Dominance expanded, flourished, and narrowed itself through specialization. When conditions shifted, collapse followed, clearing space for renewal. The fossil record preserves this rhythm clearly. Layers of abundance sit beside layers of absence, each transition marking both an ending and a beginning. The ocean did not learn to avoid this pattern. It expressed it again and again through natural consequence. Recovery did not erase loss. Each reset carried a cost, removing entire lineages and histories. Yet the sea remained productive because it allowed impermanence. It did not cling to past arrangements. It encouraged experimentation, then tested results against change. Those that endured became the foundation for what came next. Through these cycles, the ocean demonstrated resilience without memory. It rebuilt not because it remembered success, but because its conditions allowed life to try again. Dominance always returned, and disappearance followed in time. In this steady rhythm of collapse and recovery, the sea shaped a living world defined not by permanence, but by continuity through change, carried gently forward by water that never stopped moving. Life approached the shore cautiously, not as a conquest, but as an experiment repeated in small steps. Along tidal margins, water thinned and returned in cycles, exposing surfaces briefly before reclaiming them. Here, marine animals encountered new textures beneath their bodies, firmer ground, shifting temperature, and air pressing directly against tissue. These edges offered opportunity, yet they demanded restraint. Most movement remained anchored to the sea, with land serving only as a temporary extension of familiar environments. Early forays onto land did not resemble departure. Bodies lingered in shallow pools, damp sediments, and flooded flats where moisture lingered longest. Fins pressed against mud, tails braced against resistance, and muscles accustomed to buoyancy tested their strength against gravity. These moments were brief and tentative. Exposure carried cost. Without water to support mass, movement required more energy, and stillness risked desiccation. The shore permitted exploration only under precise conditions. The ocean remained safer because it buffered every extreme. Water regulated temperature, distributed oxygen evenly across tissue, and reduced the strain of weight. On land, heat and cold swung rapidly. Ultraviolet radiation struck unfiltered, and oxygen moved unevenly through air. Without protective coverings or internal systems to manage these stresses, early animals faced immediate danger. Retreat to water was not failure, but preservation. These early explorers adapted slowly, favoring traits that allowed flexibility between worlds. Bodies flattened slightly, spreading weight. Limbs stiffened enough to push against surfaces without bearing full mass. Breathing surfaces diversified, allowing gas exchange in shallow water or humid air without full dependence on lungs. Sensory systems adjusted as light behaved differently above the surface, sharper and less diffuse. None of these changes demanded permanence. They allowed return. Behavior changed before anatomy fully followed. Animals timed excursions with tides, humidity, and temperature, venturing out only when conditions aligned. Movement became deliberate, conserving moisture and energy. Some fed briefly on stranded prey or exposed resources before withdrawing. Others sought refuge in damp shelters, burrows, or vegetation that retained water. These behaviors extended survival on land by minutes, then hours, then longer spans as repetition refined strategy. The transition toward amphibious life unfolded within this balance. Adaptations accumulated not for independence, but for resilience at the boundary. Fins grew stronger, ribs more supportive, skin better at retaining moisture, yet water remained essential. Reproduction, growth, and safety returned to the sea repeatedly. Land offered expansion, not replacement. Through these gradual tests, life learned the costs of leaving its original support system. The shore did not invite dominance, it demanded patience. Each step onto land carried risk that only slow refinement could reduce. In this long interval, the ocean continued to serve as refuge, training ground, and anchor. Movement toward land did not diminish the sea's importance. It highlighted it. The earliest amphibious lives existed between worlds, shaped by hesitation rather than ambition. They did not abandon the ocean. They negotiated with it, stepping briefly onto firm ground before returning to the water that still held survival gently and consistently in place. The Permian oceans carried the weight of long experience. Ecosystems here felt complete, layered through time by countless cycles of growth and recovery. Food webs stretched wide and deep, linking microscopic producers to massive hunters through finely balanced exchanges. Reefs spread across warm shallows, shelves hosted dense communities, and deeper waters sustained slower, steadier rhythms. Life no longer experimented openly, it refined what already worked. Predators occupied every scale within this mature world. Small hunters patrolled narrow spaces with precision, exploiting brief opportunities and retreating quickly. Mid-sized predators cruised established routes, their bodies tuned for efficiency rather than excess. At the upper tiers, large hunters moved with deliberate confidence, supported by abundant prey and predictable conditions. Each level operated with minimal waste. Energy passed upward cleanly, rarely spilling beyond the bounds of the system. This efficiency shaped behavior as much as anatomy. Hunting strategies were honed through repetition, refined to match specific prey and environments. Ambush, pursuit, and patience each had their place, deployed where they worked best. Prey species responded with equally refined behaviors, balancing reproduction, growth, and avoidance in ways that reduced unnecessary loss. The ocean felt orderly, not because it lacked danger, but because danger followed familiar patterns. Environmental stability reinforced this balance. Temperature gradients remained steady, chemistry shifted slowly, and circulation delivered nutrients reliably across vast regions. Seasonal rhythms repeated without sharp disruption, allowing species to synchronize life cycles with remarkable precision. This predictability favored specialization, encouraging organisms to commit fully to narrow roles within the system. Adaptations grew precise, sometimes elegant, but increasingly dependent on the persistence of existing conditions. The Permian seas were rich in structure, layers of interaction built upon one another, creating ecosystems resilient to small disturbances but vulnerable to large ones. Complexity itself became a form of inertia. With so many relationships intertwined, change struggled to enter quietly. Pressure accumulated beneath the surface, unseen within daily stability. Predators thrived in this environment, but their success rested on continuity. Their forms reflected a world that rewarded exact alignment between behavior and condition. When energy flowed smoothly, dominance felt secure. When prey remained abundant, size and strength carried little cost, yet this very efficiency reduced flexibility. Systems built for stability tolerated variation poorly. Beneath the apparent calm, shifts began to stir. Subtle changes in climate, circulation, and chemistry started to test the limits of specialization. At first, ecosystems absorbed these changes without visible disruption. Mature systems often do, but adaptation slowed as refinement narrowed options. The same precision that once ensured success began to constrain response. The Permian Ocean stood at a peak shaped by patience and accumulation. It represented life functioning at near maximum efficiency, every role filled, every pathway optimized. Yet this fullness carried risk. With little space left for adjustment, disturbance threatened to cascade rather than dissipate. The sea continued its steady motion, unaware of the fragility hidden within its order. In this world of balance and refinement, the ocean appeared enduring. Its complexity suggested permanence. But stability, however long it holds, remains a condition rather than a guarantee. And beneath the Permian waves, that truth waited quietly for its moment to surface. The greatest die-off unfolded without spectacle beneath the surface. There was no single moment of collapse, only a tightening of conditions that spread quietly through the oceans. Chemistry shifted beyond familiar bounds. Oxygen thinned unevenly, warmth lingered where it once dispersed, and circulation slowed until vast regions of water turned stagnant. Life that depended on steady exchange found itself enclosed within an environment that no longer renewed itself. Marine ecosystems felt this change first because they were everywhere connected. The ocean functioned as one vast system, and disruption moved freely through it. When deep waters lost oxygen, the effects crept upward. When shallow regions overheated, productivity faltered. Food webs weakened from the base, and stress traveled quickly through layers of dependence. What had once been a strength, the ocean's connectivity, became a conduit for collapse. Species adapted to stable Permian conditions struggled to respond. Specialized forms lacked flexibility as temperature, acidity, and oxygen drifted beyond tolerable ranges. Reproduction failed, growth slowed. Juvenile stages vanished before maturity. Even resilient prey species dwindled, starving the predators that depended on them. Energy flow stalled, and with it, the structure of entire ecosystems unraveled. The fossil record captures this loss starkly. Groups that had persisted for tens of millions of years disappear abruptly. Reef builders vanish, leaving empty stone frameworks behind. Dominant predators, once secure at the top of food webs, end with no transitional forms. These were not gradual declines stretched across eras. In geological terms, they ended almost at once. Marine life was hit hardest because it could not escape. Land offered pockets of refuge, harsh but fragmented. The ocean offered nowhere to withdraw. As conditions deteriorated, animals remained immersed within the same failing system. Migration provided little relief when entire basins shared the same stress. Adaptation required time that no longer existed. Entire ocean dynasties ended during this interval. Forms refined over countless generations proved unable to withstand rapid systemic change. Armor, size, and strength offered no protection against chemical imbalance. Speed could not outrun a warming sea. Intelligence could not solve oxygen loss. The tools that once defined dominance became irrelevant when the environment itself withdrew support. In the aftermath, the ocean grew quiet. Diversity collapsed to a fraction of its former breadth. Simplified communities occupied spaces once filled with complexity. Recovery did not begin immediately. For a time, the sea remained sparse, its chemistry slow to rebalance, its productivity low. Life persisted, but cautiously. This die-off reshaped Earth more completely than any before or since. It erased not just species, but entire ways of life, removing structures that had guided evolution for millions of years. When recovery eventually began, it did so on unfamiliar ground. The ocean that emerged afterward carried fewer echoes of its past, rebuilt from survivors shaped by endurance rather than refinement. In this silence, the sea closed a long chapter. The world that followed would not resemble what had come before, not in form, not in balance. The greatest extinction did not end life's story, but it permanently changed its direction, leaving behind a reminder written in stone that even the most enduring dynasties remain bound to the conditions that allow them to exist. The ocean that followed the great die-off felt subdued in ways the rocks still record. Layers that once held the heavy outlines of massive bodies now appear sparse, interrupted by long stretches of absence. The giants were gone, their bones, armor, and distinctive shapes no longer pressed into sediment. What remained were gaps, quiet intervals where complexity had been stripped away faster than it could return. These fossil silences do not suggest lifelessness, but restraint. Life persisted, though at smaller scales and slower tempos. Instead of towering predators and elaborate food webs, simpler arrangements took hold. Short chains of energy replaced vast networks. Producers fed small grazers, and small grazers supported modest hunters. The ocean no longer carried the weight of dominance, it carried survival. In these simplified systems, efficiency gave way to tolerance. Organisms that endured fluctuation thrived, not because they were strong, but because they demanded little. Small bodies required less oxygen, less food, and less stability. They matured quickly and reproduced readily, spreading through recovering habitats without waiting for ideal conditions. Mobility returned cautiously, and specialization remained limited, shaped by uncertainty rather than abundance. The seafloor changed character during this interval. Instead of crowded communities layered upon one another, spaces opened between organisms. Sediments settled more evenly, undisturbed by the constant passage of large forms. Water moved gently through recovering ecosystems, carrying nutrients without the disruption of large-scale movement. The ocean breathed slowly, rebuilding its rhythms from the bottom upward. This recovery did not follow a straight path. Setbacks occurred as chemistry fluctuated and climate continued to adjust. Yet each return of productivity strengthened the foundation a little more. Small predators diversified gradually, testing strategies without committing fully. Some experimented with increased size, then receded when conditions tightened again. The sea rewarded caution. Over time, diversity increased, though it remained subtle. Many forms resembled one another in function, if not appearance. Redundancy replaced hierarchy. Ecosystems became resilient by simplicity rather than strength, capable of absorbing disruption without cascading collapse. This was not a diminished ocean, but a different one, shaped by memory written into chemistry and stone. The absence of giants lasted longer than their reigns had. Their return required not only time, but restored balance across temperature, oxygen, and nutrient flow. Until these conditions aligned, the ocean resisted excess. It favored moderation, patience, and forms that blended into the background of survival rather than rising above it. In this quiet phase, the sea demonstrated another aspect of its nature. It did not rush to replace what was lost. It allowed space to remain empty until it could be filled safely. Recovery unfolded as a long inhale, subtle and steady, carried by small lives moving through water that was once again learning how to hold complexity without breaking. By the time dinosaurs would one day appear, the oceans had already been rewritten. The seas no longer carried the same rulers or rhythms that once defined them. Layers of extinction and recovery had reshaped chemistry, circulation, and structure, leaving behind ecosystems simpler in some ways, yet stabilized by long adjustment. The great marine dynasties had fallen, and what remained operated under quieter rules, shaped by loss rather than expansion. This reshaping altered the balance between sea and land. As oceans recovered slowly and cautiously, land environments began to offer new opportunity. The disappearance of dominant marine predators reduced ecological pressure within coastal systems, allowing nutrients and energy to redistribute differently. Rivers carried materials into shallows with less disruption. Shorelines stabilized in places, and plant life expanded inland, binding soil and moderating climate near the surface. These changes did not depend on intention, only on absence. With the sea no longer producing overwhelming dominance, evolutionary pressure eased outward. Animals that ventured onto land encountered environments still harsh, yet increasingly structured. Vegetation created shade, moisture retention, and layered habitats. Insects diversified, forming food sources independent of marine cycles. Air offered oxygen freely, without the limitations of dissolved supply. Though gravity imposed new costs, it also encouraged different solutions. Land animals rose not because the ocean failed entirely, but because it ceased to dominate innovation. After repeated collapses beneath the waves, the sea favored resilience over ambition. Growth continued, but cautiously. Large marine predators would return only much later, and in different forms. In the meantime, land ecosystems expanded into available space, filling niches no longer constrained by marine supremacy. Evolutionary pressure shifted accordingly. Traits that mattered most, underwater, heavy armor, extreme mass, constant buoyant support, carried new penalties on land. Instead, mobility, structural support, and efficient respiration gained importance. Limbs strengthened to bear weight, bodies lifted from the ground, freeing movement and vision. Sensory systems adjusted to air, sharper and faster. These changes unfolded gradually, shaped by opportunity rather than urgency. The world dinosaurs inherited was not peaceful, but it was open. Oceans still held power, yet they no longer defined the limits of size, dominance, or complexity alone. Land had become a place where large bodies could persist without constant submersion, where food webs expanded vertically and horizontally, and where extinction did not immediately ripple across the entire planet. This shift did not diminish the ocean's role. It remained Earth's largest system, regulating climate and chemistry. But for the first time in deep history, evolutionary momentum leaned away from water. Innovation found traction on solid ground, shaped by different constraints and freedoms. The dominance that once belonged almost exclusively to the sea began to distribute itself elsewhere. Dinosaurs did not rise into an untouched world. They inherited a planet already shaped by repeated marine trials, cleansed by collapse, and reorganized by recovery. Their success rested partly on what the ocean had lost, and on how life learned to grow beyond it, carrying lessons written not in triumph, but in long, quiet adjustment. Modern oceans move with a quieter confidence. Their waters circulate through patterns refined by deep time, distributing heat and nutrients with restraint rather than volatility. Chemistry settles within narrower bounds. Oxygen remains more evenly available, and temperatures fluctuate gently compared to the ancient seas that once pulsed with extremes. This stability has softened the ocean's pace, shaping environments where change unfolds gradually rather than abruptly. Such calm alters what kinds of bodies can thrive. In earlier eras, chemical richness and fluctuating conditions rewarded extremes. Heavy armor, immense size, and overpowering force offered advantage in systems defined by instability and frequent collapse. Today, those same traits carry cost. Building and maintaining massive protective structures demands energy rarely justified within mature food webs. The sea no longer offers excess abundance that would support such expenditure for long spans. Efficiency matters more than dominance. As ecosystems matured, redundancy replaced hierarchy. Many species now occupy overlapping roles, sharing resources rather than monopolizing them. Energy flows through longer, more complex pathways that dampen sudden surges. When one population falters, others compensate quietly, preventing rapid imbalance. This buffering reduces the opportunity for single predators to rise unchecked. Large armored hunters still exist, but they do so within constraints that prevent explosive expansion. Cooling played its role as well. Modern oceans carry less heat than their ancient counterparts, limiting metabolic potential for gigantic bodies. Colder water slows growth and reduces the ceiling for sustained activity. This favors forms that conserve energy, regulate movement, and exploit niches precisely rather than broadly. Speed, intelligence, and coordination often replace mass and armor as the tools of success. Over time, these pressures encouraged behavioral sophistication over physical excess. Many predators now rely on learning, cooperation, or refined sensing rather than sheer strength. Prey species respond with equally nuanced strategies, creating ecosystems defined by interaction rather than confrontation. The drama of dominance remains, but it unfolds subtly, spread across countless encounters rather than concentrated within a few rulers. The slowing of ecosystems reflects longevity. When environments persist without repeated collapse, selection favors stability. Species become finely tuned to predictable rhythms of season, depth, and current. Reproduction aligns with regular cycles. Migration follows established routes. Innovation continues, yet it proceeds cautiously, building upon existing frameworks rather than discarding them. The ocean has grown conservative, not stagnant, but careful. This maturity does not imply fragility or stagnation. It represents balance achieved through time. The modern sea learned from chaos by surviving it repeatedly. Its calm is not original, but earned. Beneath the surface, complexity remains immense, yet it is distributed evenly rather than concentrated dramatically. The rare appearance of giant armored predators reflects not loss, but completion. Today's oceans feel different because they carry memory in structure rather than in species. They are shaped by constraints refined through deep history, favoring persistence over spectacle. Power still exists beneath the waves, but it moves quietly, embedded within systems designed to endure rather than dominate. Stone preserves with bias. What endures in the fossil record is not a complete account, but a selective echo shaped by hardness, chance, and chemistry. Bones settle into sediment, shells resist decay, teeth endure pressure. Soft tissue rarely survives long enough to leave a trace. As a result, much of the ancient ocean remains unseen, its most delicate inhabitants dissolved back into water without imprint. This absence is not evenly spread. Entire communities composed largely of soft bodies slipped away between layers of stone. Creatures that relied on flexibility, translucence, or simple structure moved through ancient seas in great numbers, yet left behind little more than indirect signals. Burrows hint at passage. Disturbed sediments suggest movement. Chemical signatures point to life that never gained outline or edge. These traces speak quietly, offering presence without form. Preservation also favors particular environments. Calm seafloors capture detail more readily than turbulent zones. Rapid burial protects shape, while slow settling allows decay to erase it. Shallow waters, rich with activity, often destroy the very bodies they sustain. Predation, scavenging, and constant motion break remains a part before stone can claim them. As a result, the most active ecosystems often appear sparsest in the record. Time deepens these gaps. As sediments compress, distort, and transform, information blurs. Heat alters minerals, pressure stretches shapes, entire layers vanish through erosion or subduction. What survives represents what endured not only death, but immense geological stress. Many chapters were written, then erased, leaving continuity interrupted by silence. Soft-bodied animals are among the greatest losses. These organisms shaped ecosystems through filtration, movement, and exchange, influencing energy flow at foundational levels. Their absence skews perception, making ancient seas appear more rigid and armored than they likely were. Without their record, dominance can seem more absolute, diversity more constrained. The ocean was almost certainly more fluid in form and function than stone suggests. Even where fossils exist, behavior remains elusive. Stone captures posture, not motion. It cannot reveal color, flexibility, or speed with certainty. Interactions must be inferred through arrangement and association rather than direct observation. Predation leaves marks, but not strategy. Growth patterns appear, but not lifespan in full context. The lived experience of ancient oceans remains partly imagined, grounded in evidence but filled with necessary restraint. Because of this, the ancient ocean will never be fully known. Each discovery adds clarity while revealing additional absence. New fossils sharpen detail, yet expand awareness of what is missing. Knowledge grows alongside humility, reminding us that reconstruction is always partial. This incompleteness does not weaken understanding, it shapes it. Science moves forward by acknowledging limits, allowing space for revision and wonder. The ocean's past exists not as a finished picture, but as a mosaic with missing tiles, its beauty carried as much in what cannot be seen as in what remains. What stone gives is invaluable, but it does not give everything. The ancient sea still holds its distance, vast and layered, offering glimpses rather than confessions. Its full story continues to move just beyond reach, carried quietly in the spaces between what time chose to keep and what it allowed to slip away. The creatures often called monsters did not carry intention in the way stories assign it. They did not choose violence, nor did they emerge from malice or excess. Their forms arose quietly from environments that asked specific questions and rewarded specific answers. Size, armor, speed, and power were not statements of cruelty. They were responses shaped by physics, chemistry, and survival within crowded, demanding seas. In ancient oceans, pressure came from everywhere at once. Resources gathered unevenly. Predators and prey occupied the same narrow corridors of depth and light. Encounters were frequent, not because animals sought conflict, but because density made separation difficult. Under such conditions, bodies that could endure contact, control space, or secure energy efficiently persisted longer. Over time, these traits accumulated, not through intent, but through repetition. Labeling these animals as monsters reflects human instinct more than biological reality. Sharp teeth, heavy armor, and massive bodies appear threatening when viewed in isolation. Within their ecosystems, these features served balance. Predators limited populations that would otherwise overwhelm resources. Prey adaptations encouraged diversification and resilience. Each form influenced others, shaping systems that remained functional until conditions changed. These animals were solutions to environmental challenges that no longer exist in the same form. Ancient seas fluctuated more wildly, carried different chemistry, and concentrated life into fewer productive zones. Under such constraints, moderation often failed. Extreme conditions favored extreme responses. The animals that emerged reflected their world precisely, not emotionally, but structurally. Aggression as a concept does not apply cleanly across deep time. What appears violent now was simply interaction then. Predation transferred energy, defense preserved structure. Encounters followed patterns shaped by cost and efficiency rather than intent. Animals that expended unnecessary effort vanished. Those that applied force precisely endured. This was not brutality, it was economy. Survival shaped anatomy relentlessly. Thick bone absorbed impact. Reinforced skulls protected vital systems. Crushing jaws accessed energy locked within armored bodies. These traits did not exist to dominate for its own sake. They existed because they worked. When environments stabilized or shifted, those same traits became less useful, and the forms that carried them disappeared without ceremony. Misconceptions persist because distance invites storytelling. Looking back across vast spans of time, it becomes easy to assign character where there was only consequence. Yet these animals were no more monstrous than storms or tides. They emerged, functioned, and ended according to the same rules governing all life. Understanding this reframes the past. It replaces fear with context and spectacle with structure. The ancient ocean was not a theater of villains, but a laboratory of form, testing limits under conditions rarely repeated. The creatures that lived there were shaped by necessity alone. In recognizing this, the term monster dissolves. What remains are organisms precisely fitted to worlds that no longer exist. Reminders that life adapts without judgment. Survival leaves no room for intention, only for what endures long enough to be written briefly into stone before yielding again to time. The first rulers of Earth did not fall because they were flawed. They fell because no form of dominance remained stable for long within a living system. In deep time, power rose where conditions allowed it, then faded as those same conditions shifted. This rhythm appears again and again in stone, written through emergence, expansion, and quiet disappearance. Ecosystems respond to success with pressure. When one form becomes dominant, it reshapes its surroundings, concentrating energy flow through fewer pathways. At first, this efficiency supports growth. Over time, it reduces flexibility. Resources narrow, interdependence tightens. The system becomes effective but less forgiving. Small disturbances carry greater consequence, and recovery demands more effort. Imbalance invites correction without intention. When predators become too effective, prey declines. When prey declines, predators weaken. When conditions favor one strategy too strongly, alternatives diminish, leaving fewer options when change arrives. The ecosystem does not choose stability or collapse. It follows constraint. Balance is not a goal, but a state that persists only while pressures remain aligned. The fossil record shows this process with patience. Groups that once defined entire eras eventually vanish, replaced by forms better suited to altered conditions. These replacements are not improvements in a simple sense. They are adjustments. The planet does not refine life toward perfection. It reshapes life toward persistence under new limits. These patterns extend into the present. Modern ecosystems still respond to imbalance with decline. When energy concentrates too narrowly, resilience fades. Systems built for efficiency alone struggle with unpredictability. Diversity, redundancy, and moderation remain the foundations of endurance. Where these erode, vulnerability grows quietly. Dominance, then, becomes a temporary state, not an achievement. It lasts only as long as the environment remains compatible. The moment conditions drift, traits once advantageous lose relevance. Strength, size, speed, and specialization each carry expiration dates tied to circumstance. Nothing intrinsic protects them from time. This lesson carries calm rather than warning. It reveals a planet guided not by punishment, but by feedback. Life is not judged for excess, it is shaped by consequence. Ecosystems do not resist change, they respond to it proportionally. When balance returns, it does so gradually, through loss and rebuilding rather than sudden reversal. Understanding this reframes humanity's view of the past. The ancient rulers of sea and land were neither failures nor warnings. They were participants in an ongoing pattern larger than any one lineage. Their rise and fall illustrate how life explores possibility, commits to it, then releases it when conditions no longer align. These patterns still apply because the rules have not changed. Energy remains finite, resources remain uneven, change remains constant. What differs is scale and speed, not principle. Life continues to adapt within constraints shaped by physics, chemistry, and time. The story left by Earth's first rulers is not about inevitability, but humility. It shows that persistence depends less on dominance than on balance, less on power than on flexibility. In this, the ancient world offers a quiet understanding that remains relevant, carried forward not as instruction, but as continuity embedded within the living planet itself. Water has always invited experimentation. Within it, matter moves with ease, carrying nutrients, heat, and organisms through shared space. Buoyancy reduces the cost of form, allowing bodies to grow, shrink, flatten, or elongate without immediate penalty. Movement does not demand rigid support. Failure does not always mean collapse. These conditions make water an ideal medium for testing possibilities gently and repeatedly. From the earliest stages of complex life, the sea offered gradients rather than boundaries. Light faded gradually with depth, pressure increased smoothly, temperature shifted by layers, not walls. Life could adjust incrementally, changing shape, behavior, or chemistry without crossing sharp thresholds. Evolution flourished in this softness, refining traits through subtle adjustment rather than abrupt transformation. Most major animal features emerged within this setting. Sensory organs took form as cells learned to detect light, vibration, and chemistry carried through water. Limbs evolved from flexible fins that interacted with currents long before they touched solid ground. Nervous systems expanded as movement became coordinated and response time mattered. Even the earliest jaws developed underwater, shaped by fluid resistance and prey that drifted rather than fled. Water supports complexity by distributing stress. Weight spreads evenly, temperature buffers extremes. Chemical exchange occurs continuously. These qualities allow organisms to explore structure without immediate collapse. A form can function imperfectly and still survive long enough to refine. Mistakes persist, sometimes long enough to become innovation. The sea allows this patience. The ocean also connects everything. Currents link distant habitats, carrying organisms and ideas between places. A successful form does not remain local. It disperses, encountering new conditions that test its limits. Adaptations spread, fragment, and recombine across basins. This connectivity accelerates experimentation by exposing life to variation without isolation. As a result, the sea became life's original testing ground. Before land could support large bodies, before air could carry oxygen efficiently, water held the stage alone. It shaped metabolism, structure, and interaction for hundreds of millions of years. Terrestrial life later inherited these solutions, modifying rather than inventing them anew. Even after life moved ashore, the ocean continued to experiment. New body plans rose and faded beneath the surface, independent of terrestrial trends. Some innovations succeeded only underwater, others transferred outward, reshaped by gravity and air. The sea remained a parallel workshop, refining options beyond immediate need. This role explains the ocean's enduring strangeness. Many forms that evolved there never translated cleanly to land. Transparency, radial symmetry, extreme flexibility, and regenerative ability remain largely aquatic traits. They flourish where water softens consequence. On land, these same features often fail. The ocean, as evolution's laboratory, does not seek efficiency or elegance. It explores breadth. It tests extremes quietly, allowing time to judge usefulness. Through this process, it built the foundations of animal life, offering them forward without insistence. In this sense, the sea remains active even now. Beneath calm surfaces, experimentation continues, subtle and constant. New arrangements form, interact, and vanish, not in pursuit of progress, but through persistence. Water still invites possibility, carrying forward the same gentle conditions that first allowed life to become complex at all. The deep ocean carries an unease that feels older than memory. Long before humans learned to name danger, life measured risk through pressure, darkness, and depth. For most of Earth's history, survival was decided underwater, where sight faded quickly and escape depended on instinct rather than awareness. Those conditions shaped nervous systems that responded to absence as much as presence. Water alters perception in subtle ways. Sound travels faster. Distance becomes difficult to judge. Movement slows resistance while concealing approach. In deep water, the body senses exposure without clear reference points. There is no horizon, no ground that promises stability, only vertical openness extending downward beyond sight. This environment trained early life to treat depth as uncertainty rather than opportunity. Human senses still carry this inheritance. The brain reacts to deep water differently than to open land. Heart rate changes, attention narrows, awareness heightens without clear cause. These responses do not arise from imagination alone. They reflect ancient pathways shaped when danger emerged without warning, when large forms moved silently through layers of water beyond visual range. For much of evolutionary history, the ocean was the primary arena of threat. Apex predators occupied multiple depths. Safety was temporary and location dependent. Darkness concealed size. Pressure limited movement. In such conditions, hesitation carried cost. Nervous systems evolved to respond quickly to cues that signaled depth, stillness, or sudden movement. These reactions persist even when threat is absent. The modern ocean no longer hosts the same rulers, yet its structure remains unchanged. Depth still removes light, cold still increases with descent, sound still arrives before sight. These features recreate the sensory conditions under which early survival mechanisms formed. The mind fills uncertainty with vigilance, not because it expects a specific danger, but because uncertainty itself once carried consequence. Psychological echoes extend beyond fear. Awe, disorientation, and humility arise together. Standing at the edge of deep water evokes scale that resists comprehension. The body registers size mismatch, recognizing an environment where human capability feels reduced. This response reflects an ancient truth. For most of life's story, the ocean was not adapted to observers. Organisms survived within it, not above it. Even today, descent beneath the surface alters thought. Time stretches, sound softens, motion becomes deliberate. These sensations resemble those that once governed survival beneath shifting thermoclines and shadowed depths. The mind recognizes the pattern, even without context. This does not mean the ocean is hostile. It means it remains fundamentally different from the environments humans evolved to master most recently. Land offers visual certainty and predictable footing. The sea offers layered space and indirect signals. The difference is enough to awaken older responses buried beneath language and culture. The deep feels unsettling because it still speaks in an ancient sensory language. It communicates through absence, pressure, and scale rather than clear threat. These cues shaped life when the ocean ruled dominance and danger alike. They remain embedded within nervous systems that learned caution long before comfort. In this way, the ocean preserves more than fossils. It preserves feeling. Each descent carries a quiet reminder of environments that shaped life before familiarity existed, and of instincts refined when depth itself decided who endured and who vanished into silence. After the long storm of dominance and collapse, the planet entered a stiller phase. The sea continued to move, circulate, and sustain life, yet it no longer pressed so heavily upon the direction of evolution. Its great experiments had settled into balance. Food webs stretched wide instead of tall. Power dispersed rather than concentrated. The ocean remained vast and essential, but its voice softened, guiding rather than commanding. In this calmer world, recovery had finished its slow work. Stability returned to chemistry and climate. Circulation patterns steadied. Life beneath the waves adapted to persistence instead of expansion. The sea became a place of continuity, not conquest, holding complexity without inviting excess. Its age of ruling every pathway of survival had passed, leaving behind a mature system capable of enduring change without being remade by it. As the ocean quieted, land carried more of the planet's momentum. Dinosaurs rose within landscapes, already shaped by earlier trials. They did not step into a blank world. Soils had deepened. Plants structured environments into layered habitats. Insects and small vertebrates moved through systems refined by absence and return. The world they inherited carried the imprint of countless earlier experiments, both marine and terrestrial. Their success reflected timing as much as form. With marine dominance eased, evolutionary pressure had redistributed. Energy flowed differently across the planet, favoring organisms capable of navigating air, gravity, and seasonal variability. Dinosaurs expanded into niches, shaped by long preparation rather than sudden opportunity. Their reign was impressive, yet it followed patterns established long before their arrival. From a wider view, this transition reveals something gentle about Earth's history. The planet does not move forward as a single story. It resets tone, structure, and possibility again and again. Each era feels complete from within, yet temporary from beyond. Oceans once defined everything, then they stepped back. Land rose, flourished, and would one day recede as well. This perspective reframes the present. The world we recognize is not Earth's default state. It is one arrangement among many, shaped by survival layered upon survival. Before blue skies and familiar shorelines, there were other planets built from the same stone, governed by different rules of life. Each felt stable until it changed. The sea, after its age of dominance, does not appear diminished. It appears resolved. It carries memory within its depths, not as warning, but as continuity. Its currents still regulate climate. Its chemistry still supports life. Yet it allows space for other systems to rise, just as it once rose itself. In this quiet planet after the storm, Earth rests between identities. Dinosaurs would shape the next chapter, followed by others still to come. The calm that followed the ocean's rule reminds us that dominance is never permanent and that transformation often arrives without spectacle. The planet has been many worlds before this one, and it will become others still, each unfolding softly, guided by time rather than intent.